Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. As folks come on in the webinar space, we're going to give it about a minute just to make sure everyone's here and settled before we kick off. So come on in and get comfortable, and we'll start in about 1 minute. Hello, everyone. Okay, so as we wait for people to arrive, we are going to start in about a minute, but you can let us know. I suppose you need to let us know via the question box whether you can hear us okay, and whether you can see the screen, the slides that have the title. Oh, great. Okay, super. All right, hello, welcome everyone to our product roadmap webinar. I'm happy to see so many people here today. Welcome. We have a good presentation for you. But before we get started, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. It's the same as all of our webinars, so this should be familiar to those of you who've come to these before. So first of all, we'll say this again later. We always get asked. We will be recording this webinar. So anyone who has registered will receive a recording after the event. And that means that any of your colleagues who registered but couldn't attend, that means if you have to drop off early, if you stay the whole time, you will get a link to the recording after the event. It'll come to you in an email, probably sent later today or tomorrow. Next, we're going to have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar, but you don't need to wait to ask questions. We've got a small group of people here behind the scenes who are ready to chat answers to you. So go ahead and type them whenever you see them. I know we're going to be going through a lot of updates that are coming out soon. You'll have questions. You can type them into the Q&A box. If for some reason you're having hard time finding that, well, let us know. Okay, I see someone's already asked how many participants are here today. I'm happy to share that. Right now, we're about 300 people are here. So 300 colleagues are with us. If you have a specific question during this webinar about virtual fairs, just please know that we do have weekly office hours, and that's the best place to really dig in on virtual fair questions. So you might find that a better space if you really have a ton of questions, say, about an upcoming fair. It's the right place to do that. We'll put a link out for you guys to use to join. It's on Thursdays at 11 o'clock Pacific time. Finally, this is really important. After the webinar, you're going to see a fast survey pop up. We really appreciate anyone who takes the time to fill that out. We look at every single response. It's very helpful for us to figure out what we need to do better in the future. So please, if you don't mind taking the time to fill that out, it should only take a minute. Right after the webinar, it'll pop up in a window when we're all done. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I'd like to introduce the folks on the webinar today. My name is Catherine Kelly. I'm the Director of Marketing at Handshake. Also with us, we have Britt Gergen. He is our Product Marketing Manager. Hello, Britt.
Hi, Katie. Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy to be here.
Also today, I'm very excited to introduce Brendan Leahy. He is a new product manager on our education team, and he's going to introduce himself briefly now. Hi, Brendan.
Hey, Katie, thanks for the intro. Hey, everyone. Super excited to be here. This is my second month with Handshake, most recently coming from Workday. And yeah, very excited to be a part of this team and be working with all of you.
Thanks, Brendan. We're really glad that Brendan's joined us. And also, very exciting announcement. You probably know her, but she's moved into a new role at Handshake. We also have Erin O'Keefe, who is now also a product manager on our education team. So say hello, Erin.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Katie. And yes, my name is Erin O'Keefe. I was a relationship manager, so worked with many of you for maybe up to 3 years even, which has been my time at Handshake. And I recently moved into a product manager role where I'll be directly working with the product team, our engineering team, Britt and Katie, and all of you still. So really excited to work with everyone in this capacity.
Thanks, Erin. We're very excited about this move for Erin, and we're excited for what it means for the product as well. All right, so let's move forward. Here's what we're going to cover today. I will briefly go over our 2021 product roadmap themes, and then we'll get into the actual product roadmap divided by each theme. We'll talk briefly near the end of the webinar about some resources we have for you to use, and then we will do Q&A at the very end. All right, next slide. So let's kick it off with our themes for 2021. Before we even get into the themes, slight departure, we always go through this in our product roadmap webinars. It's a really important point for us. So we try to make sure that we spend some time here, just a little bit before we get into the meat of what's coming. And it's the how things are developed at Handshake. So you might have seen this before, especially if you've come to product webinars in the past. This is our kind of graphic that describes the process for what we follow as we consider building new features. We use this because we often get that question from our partners. How do you come to the decision to make this release, or why are you putting this out? And we like to be transparent about how we develop our product as well as what we're developing. So here I'm going to use the example of scheduled reports, which is a recent development to kind of illustrate what the product wheel is. So here you go. First on the right, you have research and strategy. This is when we learn from our customers and from the market where we want to invest. So the spark behind what we decide to build comes from two different places. We have a sort of high level strategy about the direction of the business. So, those are some of the themes we're going to share with you today, and they're an indication of those strategic decisions. But then there's also feedback we hear from you in the product, or through your relationship manager or through our support team, as well as all the feedback from students and employers. And that also informs where we aim that research and strategy. And we use a couple principles to help us decide when we get all that feedback where to invest. We think about what's the community impact, how many users are going to benefit from this investment. We think about prioritizing long-term investments over short-term investments. And then we also always think about quality, trying to invest in the best product, building the best product, and with the best team. So once we receive that initial input of the what, we verify it through research. So in the case of scheduled reports, this took the form of user interviews in early 2020. Then we move to the design phase. Once we decide on the focus areas for improvement or building, we start to explore potential designs with our design team. And design takes place, we work with these mini advisory boards, which many of you have participated in. These are groups of higher ed partners who weigh in on and react to design ideas, and they offer input and their experience on the designs we've come up with. So with scheduled reports, this happened in our reporting mini advisory board that met throughout the year of 2020. Then we move on to our build stage. So after the designs are decided on, we build new products over the course of one or multiple 2-week sprints of engineering work. This means we define a set of work that the entire team thinks can be accomplished in 2 weeks. If it's a larger project, like this one, we'll break it down into many 2-week sprints. And for all of our engineering work, just as a reminder, we do divide our work into 3 categories. So at any given time, 20% of our team is working on fixing bugs, 20% of the team is working on performance, and 60% of the team is working on these kinds of new features. And this is where we offer a glimpse into the work that's ongoing in webinars like the one you're at today. So that's the stage right now. Then we move into the test and analyze phase. So before we launch any new feature, we do a lot of testing internally with our quality assurance or QA team. This ensures that all the requirements of the project are met, but it is not the only thing that we test. So we also release larger features to a small group of users, what we call beta groups, to make sure that the updates work, they work as expected, they solve the pain points, We get why people value it. And in this particular case for scheduled reports, we did have a beta group that saw the release December of 2020. And then finally, once a new project is launched, we are constantly making improvements based on the feedback we see from users like you, and that's happening right now. So just want to take a moment to do that, to share that sort of backstory to everything you're going to see today. So in the next slide, I just also want to highlight that not every feature is as involved as the one we just demonstrated. Sometimes we move through that entire cycle really quickly. So here are the few things that we have tackled recently that came directly from your feedback that are just live as of, like, I think some of them like today. So here's an example. So we heard around FDS data. We heard from you, students' first and last names are in the same field, but we have to manually separate them. So what we did was created separate first and last name fields in the FDS download. That is just now live. Refund language was another thing we heard from you. We heard that language in the refund workflow was misleading. Handshake said you're issuing a refund when in fact you're just recording one. So what we did is we updated that language to more accurately reflect the refund process. And in terms of email search, we heard from you, we want to search through sent emails to clone and reuse layouts. So what we did, and what is now live, we added a search bar to the previous emails section in targeted emails. So that's an example where we went through that cycle real fast, the whole wheel. All right, so let's move forward and now talk about the themes for the rest of the more planned developments and features coming in 2021. We have 4 themes for this year. The first is convene the community. This is about defining, sharing, and celebrating all the best practices and benchmarks and outcomes of the career service community. We do it to promote discussion amongst this group that you are with today and your peers, and also to help advance innovation in career education and elevate its importance at the highest level of the academic ecosystem. Our second theme for the year is win with students. We know we need to continue improving the Handshake experience for our students. We need to make it more valuable, equitable, and relevant so that they come back again and again. And we know that when we make the platform better for students, it is in service to your mission as career educators and all of the efforts that you are undertaking day to day. Okay, the next one is demonstrate success with data. We know that you and your teams are working to illustrate your value and enhance your effectiveness. We know that budgets are tight. We know there's a lot of pressure on career centers right now, and we want to help make you shine. So not only can we provide actionable data to help you inform the engagement that your team is undertaking, we can also help provide evidence to help you show your institution how you're contributing to the strategic mission and plan of the university. And finally, it's build relationships is one of our big themes in 2021. So we have a very specific and stated goal to not replace human connections, but create them instead. And we want to create them with you. So this year, we're going to focus on moving beyond just transactions in our product to become a relationship platform that fosters virtual authenticity. And that might be with appointments or alumni engagement or employer and student interaction. So we'll very quickly fly through the next one. Our first theme, convene the community. This is the only one where you may not see features per se. It might be more community building, whether that's producing benchmark reports around virtual fairs, whether that's our annual conference, which will be free and virtual this year on June 3rd and 4th, whether it's the many events that we put together monthly, sometimes more than once a month, with panels and meetups and employers and students, and then advocacy that we're performing in the broader community through speakerships and case studies and interviews with the media. So with that, I've moved through the first theme. I'm going to hand it off to my colleagues now, but first we're going to do a quick poll. Here we go. The poll is going to pop up. It's a good transition into our next sections. All right, I'm going to read the poll out loud. What topic would you most like to see covered at our annual Handshake Access User Conference? Remember, that is a conference in June. It will be virtual. It will be free. We hope to see all of you there. You have to choose one even if you want multiple. So it's the one you'd like to most see. All right. So I see people are still voting. Lots of people are still voting. So we'll keep it open. The options were, Britt, let's close it in 5 seconds. All right. So coming in at 32%, topics around data, insights, and reporting. Okay, it's good to know. Next up at 26% are topics around the shift to virtual recruiting. Next at 18%, best practices for using the Handshake product. 13% topics around doing more with less. That got cut off. It's supposed to be in a post-COVID world. And finally, with 12%, topics around diversity and inclusion. And I think we saw almost 80% of folks on the webinar today voting, just for those of you who asked about the end. And there's 374 people here right now. So with that, Britt, I think we need to move to the next
I'm
step.
up.
Yeah, go ahead.
And let me apologize for those poll answers being cut off. Zoom assured me that I had up to 250 characters, but that does not seem to be the case in actuality. A learning for next time. But thank you, Katie. So I'm going to kick off our discussion about recently released and upcoming product updates. And the upcoming projects we're going to discuss in these sections are the ones that we're working on over the course of the spring. So you should keep an eye on my newsletter for details on timelines as they solidify. If you don't currently get my newsletter, we can share a help article in the chat that tells you how to add yourself as a Handshake point of contact. I use that to pull my list of recipients, and I send an email every other week with pertinent product updates. So highly recommend you check it out. Oops. And I am going to kick us off by talking about initiatives that we are working on that are aimed at helping us win over students. Okay, so first up, we've kicked off a research project that aims to understand how we can improve the student-employer messaging experience on Handshake. We know that receiving an employer message on our platform can be a great and affirming experience for students, and we want to make sure that each messaging interaction is actionable, relevant, and seamless for every single student that receives a message. So to determine the updates we want to make, the direction we want to go in to improve this process, we're digging into a few research questions. You can see a couple of them listed out here. Note that some of them are qualitative, and we're answering them by doing direct research with students, and some of them are a little bit more quantitative. So they involve looking at trends overall in the product and kind of larger scale types of analysis like that. So things we're looking at include, what do messaging engagement rates look like? What types of students are getting messages? How do students feel about message relevance and volume? And how can employers make their messages even more targeted and actionable? And as I noted before, we'll share more about our findings as our approach solidifies later this spring. But just to give you a little bit of an inside scoop, here are a couple of the stats that we've uncovered about messaging in fall 2020. So of the undergrad students who logged into Handshake between August and December of 2020, 79% of them received at least one message from an employer. If those students that logged in had a work experience, organization, and skill on their profile, 91% of them received a message. And of all of the students who got a message in the fall, the average number of employers they heard from was 5. And if you prefer to look at the median was 3 employers. So again, be on the lookout for more details on the direction we decide to take. But again, this analysis is all about making that experience feel more meaningful for students and drive more action as well. All right, next up, we also want to make Handshake easier to navigate for students. We know that students log on to the platform for a variety of reasons. They might be looking to browse jobs. They might want to sign up for an event. They might want to schedule an appointment. So we want to make sure that for those people that are super action oriented, it's easy for them to accomplish what they set out to do. They don't have to dig around to find what they're looking for. We also know that some students come to Handshake with a less concrete agenda. They are there to browse, kind of learn what it's about. And in that case, we want to prioritize the most important actions they can take to move their career search forward. So we're also in the research stage for this initiative, like we are for the messaging updates. So what we're doing is we're looking at the most common flows students take in Handshake and auditing all of the different ways that you can navigate the platform. So ultimately, this project is going to result in a refresh of the student user interface to make it easier to navigate. So you should be on the lookout later this spring for details on tests we'll run on the homepage to simplify navigation. So again, we'll keep you posted as we kind of develop our direction on this front. Next up, we also want to make it easy for students to quickly find the events that are of interest to them. So to do this, we're going to use profile, career interest, and browsing data to help identify which events are the most relevant for a student. So we're building this ranking model, and when it's finalized, we're going to make it the default filter for students. So when they view the event search page, the top results are going to be the ones that we find to be most relevant for that student. They will, of course, be able to switch back to a chronological list if they want, but relevance will be the default. A frequent piece of feedback we've gotten from schools and students, especially at large distributed schools, is that the list of upcoming events can be really overwhelming. There's just so much to sift through, and if you're a distributed campus, you might be seeing events from completely different colleges that really aren't of any use to you. So this update will help students find what they're looking for more quickly, and thus give them a better, more efficient experience in Handshake. It's also worth noting that when a student looks at a virtual fair, we currently rank the available virtual fair sessions by relevance. So this was an update we released, kind of in that smaller scale, but for the same reason. We wanted students to be able to find what they were looking for really quickly without having to scroll. So yes, this will be coming soon, and we'll keep you posted when it rolls out. Oops. All right, next up. So last fall, we performed a lot of research with students and career centers to devise the most transparent and thoughtful way to allow students to self-report their gender identity and pronouns in Handshake. This was a pretty frequent ask that we got from students, and it was one that we knew it was important to get right. So if you joined us for roadmap webinars in the fall, you know that pronouns can be added to a student's profile and made visible or hidden at the student's discretion. An individual student's gender identity is only visible to that student and career services. It's also worth noting that if your institution imports gender, that's hosted in a separate field. So we don't overwrite the data that you've imported with what the student enters. They are two separate data fields. We also made it clear in the interface that gender data, if the student chooses to provide it, can be used in aggregate by premium employers to send message campaigns to students of underrepresented gender identities. This last update, the ability for employers to use that data in aggregate, anonymized, is being finalized to be released later this spring. And it's important to note that employers will not be able to see the gender of an individual student that they add to the campaigns. It's a way to add them in bulk, aggregated. And the goal is really to help them connect with students of underrepresented gender identities. Now, in a similar vein, similar but not exactly the same, of course, we've kicked off another round of research to determine the most thoughtful way to allow students to self-report their race or ethnicity. And similar to self-reported gender, we plan to allow premium employers to use aggregated, anonymized race and ethnicity data to connect with underrepresented students as well. So it'll be a very similar process of doing research with students to understand the best way to present this option, the most transparent way to do it. And then we'll build it, allow students to share that information if they like, and then we will surface it in aggregate to employers so that they can more easily connect with underrepresented students. Okay. Finally, we're continuing to work on our updates that will allow students to share a personal email address with Handshake, and it'll allow them to use that personal email as an alternate contact information, So knowing that collecting a personal email, especially when students graduate, can be a big task for schools, this update should help by giving you another source of this information and make it easier to stay in touch with alumni after they graduate. We'll share mock-ups of the experience for sharing a personal email address later this spring so that you can review it and kind of understand how it works. And I wanted to note too that if your institution uses single sign-on for students to log into Handshake, students who share a personal email address will still use single sign-on as the primary method of login. This is really about allowing them to share alternate contact information in case they would prefer to receive emails to their personal email address, and then again, also to make it easier to convert them to alumni. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brendan to dive into our next section.
Awesome. Thanks, Britt. All right, demonstrate success with data. So in this section, I'm going to be touching on a few recently released features, a few features coming soon, and some forward-looking initiatives related to data and insights. We've had an advisory board that's been focused on data and insights that has been working with the team for the last year. So many of the features we are about to discuss are a result of your feedback. Next slide, please. Okay, so first up, we have scheduled reports, which is now live. This was one of the first key focus areas of the advisory board. We had over 250 people who participated in our beta and currently have hundreds of scheduled reports going out daily. So scheduled reports are going to allow you to run and email any reports that you and your team may be reviewing regularly on a daily, weekly, or monthly cadence. You'll be able to receive these reports via visualization, PDF, or CSV, and easily upload these to external systems via SFTP. We want to thank all of those who participated in the scheduled reports beta to help us work out the kinks and resolve any deliverability issues. Next slide, please. Another feature that is just now live, we actually turned this on yesterday, is quick share reports. And this is going to allow you to quickly share a report via the new share button. You'll be able to share the report in any state, so saved, unsaved, or saved with unsaved modifications. And reports will be shareable across institutions. Keep in mind that you will only be able to share report fields and filters across institutions, not your school's actual data. Next slide. So point in time data, this is something that we should be releasing soon. This will allow your team to report on trends and get a sense of when students are taking certain actions. So starting last year, we began capturing key student information, things like major, minor, and school year. At the moment a student took a certain action, like submitting an application or attending an event, we will be adding these new point in time insight fields. And soon you'll be able to run reports reflecting this historical data. And just to give you an example of what this looks like, you'll now be able to run a report and see a student's school year at the time of their application submission, as opposed to their school year at the time the report was run. So hopefully this will really help you get a better sense for the actual time and trends when actions took place. All right, we are also working on ATS integrations and applicant uploads. This is something we're focused on the employer side. We are starting to support ATS integrations, and we currently partner with a few and will continue to expand throughout the year. What this means for career services, this will help improve the student application experience and may eventually lead to more outcome data for career centers to see and report on. Next slide. Cool. Okay, coming soon, scheduled dashboard, another big point of feedback from the advisory board. This is a follow-up to scheduled reports. You'll soon be able to have scheduled dashboards. Similar to scheduled reports, you'll be able to schedule and send out dashboards via email on a regular cadence. This is really great for leadership and to send to on-campus partners. Also note, we're currently in the process of evaluating new dashboards to add. We'll actually have a poll on that in a little bit. So yeah, looking to continuously improve in this area. Next slide. And then another big focus for us for this quarter is looking at an alumni dashboard. So we really want to build a location where career services can view insights into alumni outcomes on Handshake, surface this information from various avenues, including FDS surveys, student profiles, potentially ATS integrations, as well as manual imports. This is really going to help get a better sense for what your alumni are doing, what industries and locations are popular for alumni, and hopefully feed into our broader goal of allowing you to help connect alumni with your students on Handshake. And next up, we have the poll. I will let Britt introduce the poll here.
Awesome. Yeah. So we want to hear from you about what types of new dashboards might be of interest. So Brendan just introduced the first one, this alumni dashboard, which would include information about where your students are landing jobs. We've got a couple of other ones here as well. So the second one is employer relations dashboard. So this would include information about employers you should build relationships with, kind of help you more proactively reach out to build connections. Equity and Handshake, so surfacing information about how underrepresented students are engaging with your office and your programming and Handshake in general. And virtual engagement, information about students' engagement across employer and school hosted events. So that would be really nice for kind of aggregating all of that information in one place. Now I'll note, Brendan said that this dashboard research is ongoing, and we're actually interested in potentially building all of these dashboards. So we're really just looking to know which one would kind of be the most immediately relevant to you if we were to prioritize it this spring. So again, we're interested in all of these, and we'll continue to do research on them to understand the best information to share, but really want to hear from you all what you might like to see first. And it looks like we've got a couple more folks voting. I'll close it in 5 seconds. Alrighty. So thanks for everyone who voted. Here are the results. It looks like the employer relations dashboard got 33% of the vote, the top voted option, followed by the alumni dashboard, and then a tie for equity and Handshake and virtual engagement. So thank you, everyone. That's super helpful to know.
Awesome. Thanks, Britt. And yeah, we're really excited to continue digging in on the research around dashboards and hopefully build out all of those. So finally, last thing I'm going to touch on here is another big goal for us this year is to invest in better workflows for employer approvals, trust and safety, flag moderation and notifications, and things around in that area. We really want to start thinking about better ways for you and your team to curate employers and jobs for your students. And some of the big questions that we are thinking about currently, can we provide more relevant information from the network to make it easier for you to approve employers? What decisions that keep trust and safety at the forefront of all employer approvals? And then finally, how can career centers act as curators of employers and jobs for their students? So these are areas of major focus for us. We're going to continue research and trying to really figure out the best way to enhance this area. So keep an eye on this space. And with that, I will hand it off to Erin.
It's me. Yes, I will take this section here. So hi again, Erin O'Keefe. I'll be talking through this theme around building relationships this upcoming quarter. So first, we're going to talk a bit about our favorite topic of the year. That was a drum roll. Yep. Okay. Virtual fairs. We've seen a lot of amazing updates roll out throughout the fall semester. And I'm going to talk a bit through the most recent updates that we made in December and early January. Before I talk through each of these points, I do just want to call out one key factor here in that we are not going to be making any major updates throughout the busiest winter and spring virtual fair season. We might be making some wording tweaks or usability tweaks in the upcoming weeks. did not mean for that to rhyme, but it did. But did just want to call out, we made some recent updates. We're going to put any additional major updates on hold until we can really take a step back later in the spring and summer. So all of the updates you see here have gone live in December, early January, and I'll talk through a couple of additional updates coming up soon. But to talk through these new enhancements here, we did add an update that students will be prompted to follow an employer if the employer's schedule isn't published yet. So if the sequencing isn't in the right order, if a student finds a fair before the employer created their schedule, the student can now follow an employer to be notified when that employer's schedule was created. So that went live earlier in the winter. The second bullet here, students are able to join group sessions after they've started. This was kind of a major update, and it really gets at the point of allowing a bit more fluidity with joining group sessions during the fair. It used to be the case that in order for a student to join a group session, they had to sign up before the group session started. So there still was that bit of preparation. Now that is no longer the case. If a student comes across a group session while it's happening, they can now sign up and join it after it has started. So it's kind of more of a drop-in functionality. So definitely wanted to call that point out there if you want to highlight that to your employers. The third point, we did do some tweaking and language updates to the employer schedule editing options. We just saw that as one of the highest topics for questions and troubleshooting from employers is editing their schedules. So we did make some recent updates to make that more intuitive. The fourth point here, I'm on a roll. We added a quick call out reminder to students to upload a new resume if they wish to do so ahead of the fair, since employers can download public resumes of students who sign up for their schedules. And last but not least, I really like this one a lot. If students come across a fair before registration is open, we just recently added an update to make the language more clear that registration isn't open yet, and they can come back later to register. So just making that experience more clear for students. Phew. Okay, so those are recent updates coming soon. Again, smaller updates. There are major or bigger themes, I should say, that we're considering later in the year, but we are not going to move forward with those in peak fair season. But coming soon, encouraging students to upload or refresh their resume when signing up for a session. So just another nudge there. Engaging students and employers with new targeted email templates. So that second bullet there is equipping you, the career services team members, with just more templates in your targeted email tool to help you reach out to employers and students to prep them for the fair. Also, the third bullet here, promoting fairs to relevant employers using the industry focus fields. And then finally, I will note to talk more about longer term updates. We will be meeting with the Events and Fairs Mini Advisory Board again later this spring to discuss more of these updates. All right. Great. And this screenshot here is just what our release notes, our Help Center article release notes looks like here. So that's still the source of truth in terms of recent updates and future updates. So just wanted to put in a plug for this as well. Britt, how'd I do with that overview for virtual fairs?
You did let them sweat. You did gasp at the end, but I enjoyed that for dramatic effect. Okay. There are a lot of updates, but definitely check out release notes. I just updated them yesterday. I'll throw the link in the chat.
Thanks, Britt. All right, so pivoting quite a bit here, but still focusing on this overall theme of building relationships. I want to talk about a bit about this new feature in the Candidate Hub. So we have spoken about the Candidate Hub in previous webinars, and Britt has announced it in his newsletters. This feature is available for both premium and core employers in Handshake. We are now in the process of launching a new feature in the Candidate Hub, which is currently in its beta phase. It's currently just available for premium users right now. It's called the Your Candidates tab, the Your Candidates tab. And it basically allows employers to see which candidates have historically engaged with them. So for example, employers will be able to see which candidates have historically applied to a job, attended one of their events, which candidates have clicked follow to follow an employer. So they'll just have better visibility into those types of engagement with students. And like I said, this is live in a beta phase for premium employers right now, but we will be rolling out a free version of this feature in the future later this year. And related to kind of connecting students, not only with employers, but with alumni as well. Another big theme for our team, and Brendan is really going to take point on this topic here. He is leading the charge, but something we're thinking a lot about is building alumni connections, essentially enabling school teams to facilitate connections between current students and alumni. And this is going to be a major theme for our team this year. We know that mentorship and knowledge sharing between alumni and current students already happens organically. We want to add more clear functionality to allow career services to take a clear role in this, to track alumni interest, as well as to promote these types of connections. So we're in the early stages of this product enhancement right now. Definitely keep an eye out in newsletters for updates and beta group interest asks, as we'll be sharing more information about this in the upcoming year. Whoa. Okay, running through here quickly. This is my last topic here, just around building connections. So another really critical area and tool in Handshake is appointments. We know that appointments is a key way that career services teams connect with and support students, and it's definitely a critical part of many teams' workflows. We also know that the way appointments work has drastically changed this year, given the need to make all things virtual. So with that, we'll be focusing on appointments over the upcoming months to look at how career services users are effectively conducting virtual appointments, how teams are managing different types of appointments, which ones are the most common ones. So we already have a mini advisory board planned later this month where we will be revisiting some of these topics with that group and making decisions on what to focus on next in this area. Okay, so I went through all of that. I rhymed a couple of times accidentally to keep things exciting. So I will turn it over to Britt. Britt, if you can continue rhyming, that would be ideal, but do what you can.
I don't know what rhymes with ideal off the top of my head, so that's going to be tricky, but
Banana
we'll see if
peel.
it happens serendipitously.
Oh,
I just want to wrap up today's presentation with a couple of resources you should check out to learn about and use these updates. So first up, if you aren't already familiar with it, I highly recommend checking out our Virtual Fair Launch Kit. It is chock full of great pre-built assets that you can use to promote your fair and educate students and employers about how virtual fairs work. So there's blog posts, there's short videos, there's trainings, there's checklists. It's just, there really is a whole plethora of content to choose from. And it's built to help save you time and give you resources that you can use really quickly. If you used it this past fall but haven't checked it out in the last couple of weeks, you should note that we've added a couple of great new additions. So there is a comprehensive checklist of tasks, tips, and resources you should consider in the lead up to your fair. You can see a little screenshot of it there on the right side of the slide. We've also added the recordings for all of the training webinars we've run for students and employers. So you can grab the links and share those out with students and employers who might want to review them. And finally, we also built a brand new gorgeous playbook for employers that walks them through how to use virtual fairs and also how to make the most of the virtual fair experience, including important topics like staying in touch with students before, during, and after the fair as well. We'll drop the link in the chat so you can check out the virtual fair launch kit. Highly recommend you do if you're hosting virtual fairs with us this spring. Next up, in December, we released our annual Campus to Career report. And this contains a ton of insights about how students are navigating their job search during the pandemic. So if you're looking for information on student trends, this is a great resource to check out. We'll add the link to the chat as well. We also, oops, I'm so sorry, I'm clicking too heavily today. We also published a virtual fair benchmark report in December. This report dives deep into student and employer engagement trends across the 2,300 plus virtual fairs that were hosted on Handshake last fall. So, and in addition to looking at engagement metrics overall, we also broke them out by different school types so that you can better compare your own virtual fair trends against the results of your peers. And just a quick little example, my favorite slide to show on the right here. This is the days that students signed up for a fair leading up to the day of the fair itself. So we found that the median day for registration was 5 days before the fair, and 29% of students registered for fairs on the day of or the day before. So that is a great insight to help you tweak your marketing approach. We've seen that communications, emails that go out the day before the fair can have a huge impact on students because that's when they're most likely to take action. So again, the benchmark report link will be in the chat. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. And this is also something, Katie referenced this at the very beginning of the webinar. We're going to do another version of this virtual fair benchmark report at the end of the spring too. All right, last but not least, when it comes to learning about virtual trends, reviewing webinar recordings, learning about best practices developed by your peers, and a whole lot more, I really can't recommend our blog enough. We've been putting out a lot of really great content there, partnering with schools to highlight the great work that they're doing, and also, sharing more information about virtual fairs and virtual trends on Handshake. There is content for you all, career educators. There's also a ton of content for employers and students as well that we highly encourage you to check out and share with your students and employers. And the blog is also the host for our webinar hub. So if you want to go back and review old recordings of webinars like this one, which we'll post there, it's all there for you on the blog. So we'll share that link as well, and you can go and check it out. And that's all we had for you today. So with the last 14 minutes, we'll go through and answer some questions that you all have submitted. I'm actually going to hand it over to Katie to facilitate this, but if you have thought of more questions, please feel free to continue sending them in, and we will address as many as we can now.
All right, thank you, Britt. Okay, so the questions are gonna bop around topics a bit, and let's start here. How long before a fair does the reminder to upload a resume go out? And I think that there's a clarification required there because nothing is going out, it is in the product. But Britt, why don't you answer that question?
Yeah, happy to. So Katie's correct. The prompt to upload a new resume or update your old resume is not an email, it's actually an in-app prompt. And right now, it's just a static little reminder on the side of the available sessions page. So if a student is browsing sessions for the fair, they see a little reminder on the side of the page to upload their resume. What we're building and will be released shortly is a reminder to upload or update your resume after you sign up for a session. So we want to surface it when it's even more important that you take action. So it'll all be within Handshake. It's also optional. So, a student is not required to upload a resume and make it public, but we do want to remind them that even in a virtual fair setting, sharing your resume with an employer is still, an important part of that interaction. So making sure that you have your most up-to-date resume in Handshake and visible ensures that the employers you meet with will be able to see it.
Thanks, Britt. Great answer. All right, here's another fair one. Let's stick with fairs. On job fairs, can we be given the option to accept or decline fairs from other schools, whether we want it to appear in our system?
This is a good
I-
question.
oh.
So, oh, go ahead, Erin. Yeah, please.
I was going to volunteer as tribute to answer this question, Britt. Yeah, this is a super important question, and we recognize this as a workflow that could be improved upon for school teams. We did add an update this past quarter, or I would say over the fall semester, where if a school team is going to invite other schools to join their, or to be able to sign up for their virtual fair, or any fair for that matter, that school team user sees a prompt that asks them to acknowledge that they've asked the other career centers first before inviting them. We know kind of the ideal state would be to allow the other school teams to accept or decline those invites. That is definitely an update we are going to be researching and looking at later this year. It does involve some complexity there, so we want to make sure we set up everything in the right way. But in terms of advancements we've made in this area, like I said, this past quarter, we added that pop-up for the host to acknowledge that they've connected with school teams before inviting other schools to a fair. So very much like a top line item for our product feedback that we will explore in the upcoming months.
Thanks, Erin. Oh, golly, sorry about that. Alert you heard. Okay, so here's one that we received earlier on regarding demographic information. This came from race and ethnicity being an anonymous aggregated segment that can be used to message students when Britt gave that update. So Britt, I'm going to toss this question to you. Here it is, the question. Why is demographic information only going to be made available to premium employers, especially given your mission to democratize opportunity? Britt, do you want to answer that? And I can follow up as needed.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and obviously one that we want to keep in mind as we make these types of updates. So right now, as we mentioned, it's really important that we keep this data anonymous and aggregated, so that employers aren't immediately identifying what somebody's gender identity is, because we want to keep that private to the student. So because this information is aggregated, it needs to be used in aggregate, and premium employers are the ones that are currently able to send bulk message campaigns. So basically the way it works is that, or the way it will work is that if an employer is creating a campaign, they can choose to aim to include students with, say, an underrepresented gender identity. And then that campaign will be sent out in bulk to, a large number of students. And then students get to obviously make the decision whether they want to engage with it and reply to it. And in that way, they're able to, stay anonymous until they want to take action. Free employers, while they do have the ability to send some proactive messages, it's 100 per recruiting season, which is basically just 100 per semester. They have to send those one-on-one. So we can't currently surface the gender or ethnicity data to those employers in aggregate, because they can only send one-off messages. So again, the intent of the question is absolutely valid, and it is something that we want to, we definitely want to be able to expand access and democratize access for those students of underrepresented identities. But that is sort of the current state of the product that dictates how we approached it to begin with. Katie, anything you'd add?
No, I suppose there's sort of a bigger question implied in that question around why do some employers get premium, a division between premium and free? And I suppose the bigger picture answer there that I would just add, because I think your answer was accurate and it was right, that there simply isn't that capability even available for to message in bulk for free users on the employer side. But the larger decision of why there is even a premium at all, given our mission, it does have to do with how we've modeled our business to keep prices low for higher education, so we can include as many students for free and as many institutions as possible by creating a cost structure on the employer side too. So just a trade-off that was made there, for the business overall, on top of the functionality that Britt's laying out. So, okay, let's move on here, unless you have anything to add, Britt. I'm gonna go to my next question. Okay, here, oh, this one's for Brendan. All right, Brendan, will application, now this is very speculative. I'm going to say this is all a feature that will be developed. It is not, we don't have the details yet, but I think Brendan can talk to it. It's around the demonstrating success with data section. Will application data be shared back to Handshake or career services via the ATS integrations with employers? Brendan, you just want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think that's our hope. Ultimately, it's going to depend on the employers and what their decision is, but the plan is to set up a structure to allow for that. We think that could be a really valuable channel to help, provide outcome data for your students. So something that we are really working closely with the employer team on, and hoping that it's something that we'll be able to implement as a part of that product feature.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brendan. All right, so we have a few questions that were all around a similar theme around this relevance issue. So, Britt, I'm going to actually, I wonder if we could just sort of re-explain a bit. The initial question was, will we be able to differentiate career services events from the events approved by career services? Some related questions around, does event relevance include their college? We would love to see our events first. What is considered relevant when it comes to event rankings? Could you cover this again for folks in the audience?
Yeah, totally. So again, this is going to be the default ranking for results. It should be noted too that students have access to a wide variety of filters if they want to, continue narrowing down their search results. And the overall goal of this is to reduce students' need to scroll through an endless list of events, especially if they're at a big school, and rather be able to identify ones that are going to be most relevant for them quickly. Now, the three categories of information that I shared that are feeding into the relevance recommendation is profile data. So that would be things like their school year, their major. That would look at qualifications you might have put on the event. That would look at, if an employer posted an event, are they posting jobs that are looking for students in that particular major. We are also looking at career interests, which the student inputs, and again, can kind of help us align them to what an employer is offering on Handshake. And the last thing is student activity in Handshake. So what employers have they looked at in the past? What events have they attended? What jobs have they applied to? And actually, as I list all of these things, you might note that these are all of the fields that we use to recommend employers and jobs to students as well. So it's basically just tapping into that relevance and recommendation algorithm that we use throughout Handshake and applying it to events. So for the folks who reached out saying, I want events from my particular career center to show up higher up, they should, because the student belongs to a major that is in your career center, and thus if you're posting jobs for students in those majors, they're going to be more relevant. They're going to get bubbled up to the top. So again, the way to think about it is information on the student's profile, career interests that they've shared with us through Handshake, and their activity in Handshake. So what jobs and employers are they looking at? Hopefully that helps answer the question. And yeah.
Thanks, Britt. Okay, here we go. Do students need to have a community profile in order to attend virtual events? I thought it was just for fairs, but we are hearing from students it's for any event. Why?
I can answer this question. So it really comes down to who the student is potentially going to be interacting with in that virtual environment. So when a student signs up for a virtual fair, they can sign up for group sessions or one-on-one sessions. In a one-on-one session, they are only going to be meeting with an employer. There are no other students present. So they only need to update, their profile only needs to be visible to employers. But it is required because otherwise the employer can't, see them or see their profile. In the case of a group session, you're going to be joining a session with an employer and also other students. So the logic goes that you would then need to upgrade to community visibility, meaning that employers and other students can see who you are, so that you wouldn't be, kind of like an anonymous person in that meeting. So that was how it worked for virtual fairs, and that logic then extends to virtual events too. So if they're hosted on Handshake, which is something premium employers can do, host a virtual event on Handshake. If the event involves other students being there, then you do need to make yourself visible to the community so that you're visible to the participants in that session. Hopefully that helps answer the logic question there.
Yeah, I think that was great. Thank you so much, Britt. Given that we have less than 60 seconds, I want to take this opportunity just to thank all the folks who came to this webinar, to thank Britt, Brendan, and Aaron for speaking on this webinar, and also to remind everyone you'll get a recording of the webinar. And if you continue to have questions, I know we weren't able to answer all of the questions, please reach out to your relationship manager. We have all of these questions here. We are reading everything. So let us know if there's something that you really do need answered. We're happy to answer that for you. Thanks again, everyone, for coming. And please remember to take the survey that pops up after the webinar. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thanks all.